Okay, welcome everyone to the second part of the first session. So this talk will be given by Dr. Christian Dures from INRIA Lille, and he'll talk about how to adapt your state space Lagrangian numerical models for interactive control of deformable robots. So Christian, the floor is yours. Good luck with your presentation.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? It's okay?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Today, I think this presentation will be in line with the previous presentations. I want here to emphasize the fact that you can place, in fact, you can play with with the space you are using when you are dealing with deformable models for deformable robots. So the motivation start from continuum mechanics. In continuum mechanics, you have several fields that are defined. I have emphasized two of them, like when you start from an undeformed shape and you go to the deformed shape, you use a position displacement field, and you in fact derivate this field to obtain the strain field. So it means that from the origin there are already several fields. I will not go into too much detail about continuum mechanics, but as you know, except in very simplified case, there is no analytical solution. So basically, you have to deal with discrete models, so discrete fields, and there are different types, in fact, of elements, models that are defined. Federico just talked about 1D models, roads with the Khosrow theory, so that you have the theory and you have the corresponding approach that can be used from two models. So he presented a specific approach. Maybe more generally, a lot of people are using finite element method to discretize this continuum mechanics, but it's not the only numerical method as presented before. You also have 2D models with shell, plane, stress elements and corresponding elements. So you have the theory and the corresponding element. And of course, the 3D when you don't have any assumptions on the shape. Here in 1D, the assumption is that the section is rigid. And here the assumption is that you have you have no deformation on the thickness of the element. And in 3D, there is no assumptions. But at the end, you obtain numerical models, okay? And this is also a new field. And what makes a big difference with traditional robotics in terms of modeling is that we have to deal with these numerical models, where basically the size of the models are much bigger. Usually, if you are using a finite element model, it's related to the size of your mesh. And it's linked to the convergence. The more you put elements, the more convergence you'll get. And in fact, it's also due to the fact that you want to you want to have something continuous in the strain domain, which is a derivative of your displacements, of your position of your nodes, and basically to have something continuous, you may need either to use a lot of elements or to use high order elements. So the complexity of the numerical model is really linked to this convergence problem, which is not really a problem in generally our problem in robotics. And I will come back to this later. And after that, you also have a new space that is also existing in finite element model, is the where you do the integration, where do you compute your constitutive law. Generally is done on ghost points where you do the integration, and so it's also another space which is not necessarily at the same. It's not related to the number of degrees of freedom necessary. For instance, with complex elements, you have a lot of ghost points, and probably more ghost points than the number of points on your mesh. Then, if you are using that if you are using these numerical models for robots, you also want to deal with your degree of actuation. So the degrees of actuation are generally much smaller. The space of the actuation is smaller than the space of the degrees of freedom if we are under actuated. The degrees of sensing also, if we put sensor on our robot, generally we cannot put a number of sensor that is connected to the size of this type of models, which have thousands of degrees of freedom. So the degrees, so we are also under observation, in the case of under observation. And there is also the importance of interaction. If we build a soft robot, it's to go into contact with the environment, to have probably friction with the environment and add other constraints. And these generally are defined with other spaces. So basically, there is a lot of possible space, a lot of possible coordinates. There is the degrees of freedom of our models. There are, again, the constitutive law, the ghost points, which is another space, the space of the mesh, the motion of the nodes, the space of the actuators, effectors, sensors, and contact and other constraints, and maybe other. And we will use the support of Lagrangian mechanics to play, in fact, with this space. In fact, today my presentation is about a small game, playing with this different space, and I think it's related to the ports. Hamiltonian. I think there is probably a connection with the Hamiltonian ports that were presented this morning. So, but I use this Lagrangian mechanics approach. I think there's connection to make after that. So let's take some equations. I will not have too much equation, but some. I will present some of them. So basically, when you have a FEM model, but it could be another type of numerical deformable model. In fact, you compute the internal force of your system, and you basically this internal force, you put them in equilibrium to the external force. If you are considering dynamics, then you will also consider the mass effect, the inertial force. But it's not necessary. In the talks, I will not necessarily take into account the dynamics. And then we will also use this approach of Lagrange multiplier to define actually the other space, like cable actuation and pressure actuation. So in fact, we will use two types of games. Starting from the equation, we could do, in fact, a Duff reduction composition, or we could do selection of Duffs. So let me explain that with a quasi-static case. So imagine that I take exactly the same equation here. I just remove this dynamic part. Okay, I have 0 here. I want to equilibrate my internal force and external force. Okay, generally the internal force is non-linear. So I have to linearize around my initial position and my current position. And I will compute such some matrix system where I have the tangent matrix of my system, my unknown of movement, the previous equilibrium of force, so internal, external and internal in the current position, and this Lagrange multiplier. And in fact, I could do two things. So if I define that for finite element model, this matrix system is the size of this system depends on the number of degrees of freedom. So the number of nodes of my mesh generally. So it could be thousands of equations. And in the literature, a lot of people have proposed to use model reduction or model composition, which consists in fact of stiffness projection. I put mass here in parentheses because if you use the dynamics, of course you have to project also your mass. And basically, to take it simple, if imagine that you have a mode, as Federico presented before, you can say that the displacement of your mesh depends on a certain number of, can be described with a matrix here, and a number of parameters of degrees of freedom that is much smaller than the size of here. Okay, so here you would have like a rectangular matrix with a lot of lines and a reduced number of columns, and here a small vector. Okay, and if you can do that, then you can rewrite this equation in a reduced space. It's basically very simple, and probably a lot of you, it's not a surprise for a lot of you. And you can do another thing. So here, basically, you say that all your degrees of freedom can be composed in a reduced space. But you can do another thing, which is selecting some degrees of freedom to define another space. And it's more than a compliance projection, where basically, if you can define, you want to define a space basically that depends on the position of your nodes, like we will use for actuation, for instance. You can in fact use this value, this new space. You linearize this new space as we have done for the mechanics, and you, in fact, what you will obtain is a projection of your inverse matrix in a reduced space defined by the Lagrange multiplier that we have defined here. So basically, this new space is defined by something that is more like a displacement thing, or I would say geometrical thing here, a geometrical measure, and here something that is more an effort, a force, etc. And basically, you can play with this Lagrange multiplier to define a new space. And in that case, you see that you are not projecting, as you are here, the direct matrix. Here we project the stiffness. Here we project the compliance. So we could play with that, and I will explain now more examples of what we can do with this two approach of Dopf reduction or composition and projection of the compliance. So a very simple thing you can do with the first approach is the deformable rigid composition. Imagine that I have oops, sorry, the video is not working. Okay, it's working. So imagine that I have this robot. I have a finite element model for majority of the part, but there is this part of the model that is really fixed, you know, on a rigid object. So you want, in fact, to say, okay, this part of the model, I want to rigidify it. So basically, if I want to rigidify a part of my model, you want to say that here these nodes somehow are slave, and they depend on the motion of this frame. Okay? And basically, you can define a Jacobian, it's a rigid Jacobian, saying that if I have a motion dq of my frame here, it will create a motion of my nodes. And if my stiffness of the whole object of the whole finite element model is defined by k, in fact, for the nodes that are rigidified, I will have a reduction of the matrix that can be seen here. So basically, you see that the motion of these nodes here depends on g multiplied by dq. Okay, and I use another projection to say, okay, if I have force that applies on this slaves node, okay, I can project them back in this in this frame using the Jacobian transpose to transfer this force to the frame here. Okay, so it's like obvious, and what you obtain at the end is a system that has the size of 3n if you are in 3D. So basically, the number of nodes that are free on your model, plus 6, which is the 6th direction of your rigid frame. Another thing that you can do using this approach is a projection in the smaller space with a model order reduction. Basically, the idea is that you can, imagine that you have a very complex finite element model. So here you have thousands of degrees of freedom. It will not be, you will not be able to compute that in real time. But what you can do is you can basically shake the model in several ways, and you can extract from that some modes of deformation. And basically, you will say that the position of your node depends on a linear composition of these modes. And basically, your new degrees of freedom are this alpha. Basically, if you say that you use 6 modes, instead of having thousands of degrees of freedom, you have a model that has only 6 degrees of freedom. Okay, so you really do a reduction of your matrix system in a reduced space. In fact, for that, you need to do this offline stage where you shake the robot within the range of its actuator. You compute a snapshot space, and then you try to find a basis that minimize the construction, and you do a SVD, and you can obtain the reduced basis. And after that, we also have another stage to reduce the computation without loss of information, because of course you project a big matrix here in a reduced space. So you have a lot of information in this matrix that will be basically compressed in the reduced space. So you don't need, in fact, all the information contained in this matrix to compute this reduced matrix. And with that, you again, it's another example with the multi-gate robot, where we compute a reduced model, and basically with about 30 modes of deformation, basic, so 30 basis vectors. So we can compute a very good, accurate model and reproduce the motion of the multi-gate robot. And of course, as you do a massive projection of your model, you can compute that in real time and use that in your control. Now, I will, in fact, rephrase what Federico just said before the break. It's another example for me of reduction. In fact, when what they use when they use COSFA model, it's not so much that they use the COSFA model, it's also that they use reduced coordinates. In fact, between two frames, they use a system of reduced coordinates. And basically, this approach allows to reduce also the number of degrees of freedom of the system. And if you look at, so it's not exactly the same paper I think Federico was presented. It's a previous paper where basically they were using the strain, a constant strain between two frames. But I think at the end you obtain quasi the same equation. In that case, you have not so much the stiffness. You don't have to project the stiffness because you can work directly in the strain domain. But you have to project your mass because the mass is defined in global coordinates. It's the inertial effect. And you see that basically these equations that I took from the paper of Federico are definitely a projection of the mass in a smaller domain. So this was example of, I would say, reduction of system. And now I will take another path with DOF selection. And where you do a compliance projection. So first, maybe why we do that. I insist on the fact that the actuators, it's a very small space compared to the deformable space generally in our soft robots. So for instance, when you actuate a structure like that, in fact, you have only 1 degree of freedom, but that can have an impact on some nodes, for instance, that are around this cavity. But at the end, you only have 1 degree of actuation. And basically, to do that, we use a Lagrange multiplier. You can say, so if you increase the pressure, in fact, you will increase the force on each of these nodes that are on your mesh. So you can say that lambda, for instance, is the pressure, and ht is a column vector with 0 everywhere on the mesh, except on the nodes that are around this cavity. Okay, where you and on this you take basically a small area of the surface and the direction of the surface, and you have your matrix H. And in the dual space, in fact, you are, when you take that to impose the pressure in the dual space, you have the volume. And in fact, depending on what you want to do, you want either to impose pressure or impose volume. But to impose volume, you have to define this delta value, which is the volume, and basically the variation of this volume depends on the motion of all the nodes that are around this cavity along this direction that you define when you define HA. And basically, to impose the volume, you can define, so you have your equilibrium, and you can define a new equations like that to impose your volume. For cable force length, it's the same thing. So you will define a path for your cable inside your deformable object. This path will define also the length of your cable, and so on the size of the force, basically, when you define your Lagrange multiplier here, in fact, it's really related to the force, the pulling force you apply on your cable. Okay, it's a pulling force, and this force will distribute over the different points of inflection of your cable, and of course on the final extremity of your cable, where the cable is fixed on your structure, and here you will retrieve this pulling force. So you can say my unknown lambda is the pulling force, and basically ht is the distribution of the force of my cable. And when you are talking, so you can impose this force. It's quite easy. When you want to impose the length, it's a little bit more complex, because you have to be sure that your cable is always tightened. So basically, you have a complementarity constraint. You have to say that your cable can only pull; it cannot push. And basically, it can only pull if your cable is tightened. So basically, if the length that your current length of your cable corresponds to the position of your actuators. And now you see that we have basically defined this cable actuation thing. If I take this example of cable actuators, here I have a trunk which has 8 cables. Okay, so you can define 8 columns in matrix H, and you have 8 unknown for your cable. And this cable can apply force. And when you will apply force, you will deform your trunk and you will move your end effector. So you can define also another space for the end effector. It's also a subspace of your degrees of freedom. And so you can use the same thing, Lagrange mechanics, Lagrange multiplier to define your effector. So basically here it will be HT could represent the force that you apply on the end effector, and delta, the dual, could be the position of your end effector. Or usually it's more the relative displacement to your objectives. Okay. And if you do that, and you use Lagrange multiplier, in fact, you can have a very nice reduced model using a compliance projection to link basically the force of your actuator to the displacement of your end effector. You just have to use this projection, compliance projection. So that I presented before, you have lambda, the force of your cable. It will create force everywhere on your structure. Using the compliance, you will get the displacement of all the nodes of your structure. And basically, using this projection, you will extract here only the displacement that are interesting for you, which are the end effector displacements. So in that case, for instance, you have three effectors, three direction of effector and 8 cables. You have a 3x8 matrix that describe basically the link between the force that you apply on the cable and the displacement of your actuators. You can do exactly the same thing to project the displacements also. So basically when you pull on your cable, you create also displacement on your cable. So you can do the same kind of projection in the actuator space. And if you do that, these two type of projections, so if here I have a 3x8 matrix, here I have an 8x8 matrix, because I project the force of the actuation in the displacement of the actuation. And basically with that, you can obtain basically what is a very generic model, kinematic model of soft robots using the compliance, the definition of compliance. Here, in fact, you inverse this matrix. So you have a relative displacement of your actuators that create a small displacement of your end effector. And here you have basically what is exactly a Jacobian of that you use classically in robotics. And we have that thanks to the fact that we have projected the system in the compliance space. And we have, in fact, use a condensation in our actuation and effector space. We can do that, so use the Jacobian. You can also inverse the Jacobian, but in general, it's better to use also constraints and use to inverse the model, to use quadratic programming optimization. So again, if I want to minimize the distance between a goal of my end effector and my current distance on my end effector, I can minimize the distance and I will obtain a QP problem, and I can define some constraints, unilateral constraints of my actuators that I defined before. And for instance, the fact that your actuator can only pull and cannot push at the same time. And and in this particular case, you will say to me, okay, but the system is there is a redundant actuation because you have 8 cables and only 3 degrees of freedom for your end effector. So in that case, basically, it's true the QP problem has not a unique solution. So the number of effector is smaller than the number of actuator. So in that case, we use a new objective, which is the expression of the actuator mechanical work, which can be defined in that also in that space, in the actuator space, and can be added with a small value in our minimization. So of course you have to use a small value here to not only so that the objectives of your QP still remain to go to the end effector position you want, but it will also minimize the energy of deformation. It will find basically the motion that minimize the mechanical work of your actuator. And you can see the result in that video. So you can drive basically the three DOF of the tip of your robot, and it will compute the motion of the 8 cables, so that it reaches the position. And here it's the video is completely open loop. It's really based on the FEM model of the robot. We can use the same thing for doing a force state estimation. It's more sensing. Then we project basically the model in a sensing space. Imagine that I have a cavity and I want, basically when I apply a force, I have a volume sensor. Basically, change of volume. I can use that also to minimize. Exactly the same algorithm can be used to minimize basically the volume that is measured to the volume of the model. And basically, we will also define a Lagrange multiplier with a H matrix. Here, the H matrix is the volume of the cavity that depends on the motion of dx of the points. And basically, basically when you do that, you can estimate basically the force that you have applied on your robot, because you try to find a force that explain why there is a motion of your there is a change in the space of your sensor. So here we have this sensor that allows to know the position of the force, because you have to know the position of where you apply the force, and to know the intensity we can use this change of volume. We have also used that on this robot. Here you have, in fact, you see here you have some cavities that is connected to volume, change of volume sensor, and basically the contact intensity is measured by airflow measurements. You see that there is a movement of air in this cavity, and you can deduce the force that the user is applying, because you minimize, basically, you try to find a force that explains why you have this change of volume. It's exactly the same approach that you can use in visual surveying. Here, in that case, in visual surveying, for instance, you can put some marker points on your robot. So you can say, okay, now my measurement space is the motion of this marker points, and it could be explained by the force I apply on the robot. So I define some location where I can apply some force. I may have applied some force. So these forces are unknown. You also have the actuation force that you may or may not know. Here, in that case, we consider that we know the force that we apply on the actuator. So these are not unknown, but you can still define a quadratic programming problem where basically your unknown are the force you apply in these points and your measurements. So you try to minimize what you observe in the model and what you measure in reality. And what is interesting is that when you do that, the matrix of your quadratic programming problem, it's a little bit like we see when we want to use the inverse model. If you need to have a sufficient number of measurements, a sufficient number of point of measurements compared to the number of unknown force you want to infer in your model. So now in video, so you see we have some marker points on the robot. So basically we try to minimize in the space of this sensor of the motion of these marker points. We try to minimize the distance between what is existing in the model and what is in reality. And to explain the difference, we try to find what force what external force explains this difference. And you finally end up with a generalized force sensor. So you really use your robot as a force sensor, thanks to the inverse of your model.
Christian, just a
Yes.
heads up, you only have 10 minutes left for the Q&A.
Okay, perfect. You can do that also for projection in the contact space. In the contact space, you have complementarity constraint that comes from the contact. So again, you project your mechanics in this contact space, and we have developed, for instance, an inverse model that can take into account the contact. So for instance, in this robot, if you don't consider the contact, your inverse model will not reach the target point, and so you will not reach the target. And if you consider the contact, if you include in your quadratic problem the complementarity due to the contact points, in that case, you can basically find a better solution. So here on the video, you will see that now the obstacle is tracked and modeled, and we are able to recompute the inverse model, taking into account basically the contact with the obstacle. And last but not least, we have worked with Federico on trying to combine discrete Coursera model with finite element model, and it's really the same thing. In fact, you can define. So on this example, on this video, you see that there is a Coursera rod, okay, that has a curvature at the tip, and basically it's inserted into a FEM model. And when it will turn, you will see that it creates a deformation on the FEM model, and the relative compliance between the two, the rods and the FEM model, is taken into account. So we can basically pull on the Coursera rod, but we can also turn it to deform the structure. Is a little slow. Okay, and basically how we do that is really we have another constraint space that is defined that basically is a sliding constraint between the Coursera model and the FEM model. Okay, I will skip that. The last thing I wanted to insist on is the fact that when we do model order reduction as we presented, in fact, we can also use that in a state observer. So basically, we can use the reduced order model and use a state observer to emulate the role of the sensor and try to find where is the position and the velocity, what is the position and the velocity of the robot in the reduced space in order to do a dynamic control. So, for instance, on this robot, we limit the vibration of the robot. So we have applied that also on this pneumatic robot. Sorry, I go fast for the end. Basically, the idea of this talk was to explain that Lagrangian mechanics allows the freedom in the choice of space in which we work. We can use basically DOF reduction or composition to choose the degrees of freedom of the robot, which is, I think, something key with the way we choose the degrees of freedom of our robot. And then we could do also projection in a smaller space to have actuation, sensing, contact, etc. And it's using a compliance projection. So it's a very generic framework. The implementation is available with SOFA and software training, and we are now in the work of extending that to new parameter space. So basically, if you take the static equilibrium I showed, you define a new parameter that you want to optimize, And basically, you can use Lagrange multiplier also to optimize basically the parameter you want to test on your structure. So it's really linked maybe to a talk that we take after, which is a differential simulation. I finished here. I'm happy to answer the question, and thank you for inviting me for this talk.
Thank you, Christian. Very interesting talk. I see Stefano has a question. Just go ahead.
Christian, first of all, thanks for the very nice talk. I really enjoyed it. And actually, I just a comment. There is a lot in common with what I presented. And for example, let me give you, what you call projection is just actually in the setting of Port Hamiltonia, what you would see through a port. You have a transformer and a port, that's all.
Exactly.
Duality and causality is basically the choice of, this duality, and which actually in Port Hamiltonia it would not be volume, but it would be volume flow, and would not be length, but it would be length change. Lagrangian multiplier is a fixed causality, and actuator and sensors are dual storage. So
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. I got a lot of ideas. So very nice work. Thanks a lot.
See, Federico has a question. Go ahead.
I agree with Stefano. Amazing talk as usual. Thank you very much, Christian. I have some question related to the last part. I think we discussed already these things together, but let's make it public. Let's say about the differentiable model, and I think it's what also we heard soon from other speakers. Right now, in the optimization problem that you solve, those Jacobian are numerically computed, I guess, or yeah.
Yeah, everything. So on the FEM model, everything is numerical at the end.
No, but I mean the derivative of the.
But let me take an example. If you want to, for instance, to optimize the Young modulus on an elastic body, even if you consider large deformation, the Young modulus is always proportional to the force. Okay, so you can extract your parameter very easily, and it will not be it's a parameter, for instance, that you can differentiate very easily. Maybe there are some parameters like lengths of object or dimensions that are much more complex, and probably in that case we can use a numerical approximation of the derivative.
Thank you. Another question is about the use of machine learning to find this reduced space. How I think some authors are touching this point. I think it will have some, future work. What do you think about? Can you comment about that? The use of machine learning for this?
So I'm not an expert in machine learning, but with the people who are knowledgeable. In fact, when I presented the model order reduction, in fact, for me, there is a lot of links because, in fact, if I understood well, in a lot of neural network approach, you try actually to minimize, also to do this reduction of space. And we also, in the model order reduction, we have this offline stage that could be seen as a learning process where we shake the robot in many directions to find the modes, and then we project into this mode. So for me, of course, there are some links that are easy to make. After that, the only difference I see, like for instance, from people that try to mimic a FEM model with a neural network, for me, there is something that is a loss of. So the question is more, what happens if you end up in a position that has not been where your model has not been trained? Okay, in a model order reduction, it's easy to understand. In fact, it's act as a low pass filter. So for instance, if you create a force and you don't have it in your local force and you don't have it in your space, you will miss maybe a small local deformation. Okay. What you have, if you have learned your model with a neural network and you put a force that has not been trained, the question is what result you will get. This I don't know. Yeah, this may be maybe one of the difficulties, but that probably in terms of performance, you could get very good results with that.
Thank you, Christian.